You are part of a growing movement. A movement of churches people can't ignore. Not because of what you say, but because of what you do. You move toward people. You meet them where they are. You bring hope, healing, and purpose to people who are far from their heavenly Father. This is what it looks like to be an irresistible church. God is working. Lives are being changed. The movement is expanding. And you are part of it.
We are here on location at our first ever permanent home.
We are receiving more and more people that don't know Jesus, people that are coming back to Jesus.
God's doing some really great stuff in and through the people here at Lifehouse.
We have seen families come back to church, restart a relationship with Jesus because of the story of our elementary kids and their faith. And we know that God is just getting started.
So we're sitting there in the conference and they show this as a title package and they begin to celebrate you. And then just a couple of seconds later, Andy steps up and he begins to encourage and challenge the leaders. But I want you to know how fascinating and how incredible it is to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. I mean, when we begin to talk about purpose and mission, and we begin to talk about what God is doing, and we begin to talk about how our lives are meant to be a means to somebody else's end, that's where meaning comes into play. And then we begin to think about as a church, we're a part of something bigger than we could ever imagine. We're a part of something that God is doing in and through our world as we try to figure out collectively, what does it really look like to truly follow after Jesus? Now, if you've been around here for the last several weeks, we're in this series that we've entitled Let's Go. And the reason that we've entitled it Let's Go is, well, we are in our last series as a portable church, that when we finish this series, it is a basic understanding that we no longer will be setting up pipe and drape on a Sunday morning. We get the chance to move into our first permanent home, and it's going to be awesome. And for us, this idea of Let's Go, it's not merely a slogan, it's our story. I mean, as you've heard, we started in a living room, and it was fun, and there were pancakes, and you're like, well, man, why can't you make pancakes? I forgot my griddle this morning. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, we just met in a living room, and we enticed people with food. It's funny, students are not much different than adults. We laugh about students. If you give them food, they'll come back. I mean, let's be honest, you give me food, I'll come back anyway. We went from a living room, we went to an HOA amenity center, and then we went from school to school, Betty Perot to Vista Ridge, and then we navigated the challenges of 2020, and in the process of that, we went to parking lot. After parking lot, we moved to the movie theater, and then we moved back here to Lizzie Curtis. And you know what's fascinating is now we are on the precipice, if you will, of God's faithfulness and your generosity. That so many people have chosen to participate in this opportunity and chosen to be a part of what God is doing in and around us, that we get the chance in short order to move into our first ever permanent home, which absolutely is worth celebrating. But I want to be clear. We're not just celebrating a building because the building is the mission. We're celebrating a building because the building makes it possible for us to fulfill the mission that God has put in front of us. Because environments, they matter. I mean, as we've talked about, the beautiful thing that we have in front of us is we get the chance to create environments where our children can learn that Jesus loves them no matter what, and that matters. We get to create a place for students to ask honest questions, and that truly matters. We get to create a place where marriages can find hope and maybe reconciliation and restoration, and that matters. We get to go create a place for our next door neighbor to come and to find a church as they walk in, as they walk back out, and say, I did not expect church to feel like this. And that matters. So yes, we're excited about a building because a building opens up the door of opportunity and it gives us a home and it gives us a base. But the building is not the finish line. The move is not the, we've made it. The move is more of a starting line, an opportunity. You see, we're not moving into the building so we can settle down. We're moving into the building so that we can fully step into the mission that God has in front of us. And it's not a mission for me, and it's not merely a mission for just those that have been on the stage. It is an all-skate where we get to wrestle with one of two questions. Number one, will we enjoy the building, or will we own the mission? Because a new building will require a new level of ownership. It's not just excitement, it's ownership. It's not just attendance that we come and check a box. It's ownership of what God is doing. It's not just, I can't wait to see it. It's ownership of being a part of what God has in store for us. And this is why Joshua 1 matters so much. You see, Joshua's leading the Israelite nation. He's leading them into a new season, as we've been talking about. And we've been sharing that Moses is gone. I mean, the great leader Moses that stepped up to Pharaoh and said, let my people go. And they said, okay, kind of. You know the story. They ran across the Red Sea, but they didn't run across the Red Sea. God parted the Red Sea. And then they ran through the Red Sea. And then they got to the wilderness, and they were stuck there for 40 years. And Moses continued to lead them. And in the process of Moses leading them, he encouraged them to trust God no matter what. And God provided provision time after time, day after day after day. And now Moses is gone. Joshua's looking at what is ahead. The wilderness is behind. The Jordan River is in front of them. And the promised land is right ahead. And Joshua, he gives the people direction. And as we talked about last week, there's 2.5 tribes, if you will. There were 12 tribes of Israel. 2.5 tribes had already gotten to go east of the Jordan River and get there, and were able to receive and take part in their portion of the promised land. That there was this fertile land that they took ownership of. And there were 9.5 more tribes that were getting ready to take on the promised land that was right across the Jordan River on the other side. And God and Joshua looks at these 2.5 tribes that had settled, and he gives them direction. And he says, guys, remember what Moses said? This is our chance. I need you to come and to help. And remember how they responded last week? They said this. Then they answered Joshua, and they said, whatever you have commanded us, we will do. And wherever you send us, we will go. That's ownership. It wasn't well, we'll think about it. It wasn't, you know what, we'll participate if it's convenient. I mean, I've got like from 9 to 5. That's about, It wasn't as long as somebody else goes first, we'll take part. The tribes looked together, the leaders of the tribe, and they got everybody together and they said, hey, Joshua, listen, whatever you have commanded us, we will do. Joshua, wherever you send us, we will go. The sound that you hear, it's the sound of people moving from mere spectators. Go. You got it. We're cheering from behind. To stakeholders saying, I'm in this regardless. It's the sound of people moving from consumers just consuming when convenient to genuine contributors saying, I want to be a part of what God has in store. It's the sound of people saying, we're not just going to sit here and watch what's happening. We want to be a part of what God is doing in and through our community. And you know, every movement has to make a shift, right? Every church even has to make a shift. At some point, our language has to change. In fact, I've said this myself, right? Somebody should. We love that idea. You know, hey, this would be a great idea. You know, if somebody wanted to, somebody should really do this. You know, yeah, somebody should serve kids. Somebody really should go welcome new families as they walk into our church. Somebody really should lead a group. Somebody should give generously. Somebody should really do these things. That would be a great idea. But you see, ownership is not the idea of somebody should. Ownership is when we take steps forward, and rather than saying somebody should, we say, we will do. We will go. You see, ownership begins when they should becomes we will. And that is the invitation in front of all of us. Not because we have to, but because we get to. Not because the church needs something from us, but because Jesus has invited us into something bigger and better than we can ever imagine. That's why when we look at Luke chapter 5, Luke, many of you have heard me say, when you come to the story of when the gospel account of Luke decided that, hey, there's so much going on about this Jesus guy that I want to write an orderly account. And so he thoroughly investigated the life of Jesus. Thoroughly investigating everywhere he can, trying to figure out, I want to write an orderly account because I want to make sure that the life of Jesus is able to be carried on from generation to generation through print. Why? Because something happened. There's something that went on in the life of Jesus that made these 11 no-good fishermen and tax collectors into bold, crazy individuals that are willing to do whatever it takes to ensure that the message and story of Jesus is passed on. And so Luke's like, I've got to write about it. And Luke documents in chapter 5 a situation where Jesus is standing by the Sea of Galilee. And he's teaching the crowd, and he's telling them, he's encouraging the crowd, and the people are pressing in on him, and he's getting, they're getting closer and closer. And so he looks at Peter and he says, Peter, you got some boats? Would you mind if I jumped in a boat and we pushed off the water a bit and I began to teach the crowds from the boats? Would that be okay? That's an easy ask, right? I mean, sure, Peter. Peter looks at Jesus and says, yeah, that sounds good. Why don't you jump in the boat? This is something that's easy we can do to help fulfill your mission. And then Jesus pushes off and he continues teaching him. And then Jesus says to Peter, he says, hey, I'll tell you what. It says, when he had finished, he said to Peter, now what I want you to do is I want you to put your nets into the deep water and let down the nets for a catch. The first ask, can I get in the boat, was an easy ask. Second ask wasn't just inconvenient. It felt unreasonable. I mean, Peter's a fisherman. Jesus is a rabbi. Peter knows the lake. Peter knows the timing of when to fish. Jesus, you're smart and all, but leave the fisherman stuff to us. We've already gone out to the lake. We've already brought our nets in because there was nothing to be caught today. And now you want us to drop our nets again. Do you realize what it goes through? I mean, every time we throw our nets in, if we don't get a catch, or if we do get a catch, regardless, the nets get so dirty and so grimy, and there's just all this trash that it picks up. I mean, sometimes it's great because we get a big catch, but after the day, we get all of our fish in, and then we've got to clean the nets, and we've got to let them dry. Jesus, this is an ordeal. You want us to put our nets out. This isn't something that is just easy. Jesus, I am the fisherman. Give me the ability to tell you what to do. You're the rabbi. You tell us how to do spiritual things, and we'll tell you about the practical things of fishing. All right? You just do your own thing. Listen to how Peter responds when Jesus says, drop the nets. Simon answered, Master, we've worked hard all night, and we haven't caught anything. Jesus, I just want to put that in there real quick. I want you to know we've been fishing. Hey, the fish ain't biting today. It doesn't matter where we put the net. They've burrowed into the ground at the bottom. There's nothing we can do. We have tried everything, and nothing's working. But Jesus, because you say so, I will let down the nets. It's a polite way of saying, Jesus, I respect you. Appreciate the sermon. It's great teachings and all. But we'll do it. We'll do what you've asked. Jesus, we've already tried. Didn't work. We've already worked hard. We failed already. We've already cleaned the nets, and Jesus, we are tired. But because you say so, I will drop the nets. See, this is that moment. Not because it makes sense. Not because it's an I feel like it, and not because there's a guaranteed outcome. Simon very easily could have just dropped the nets and just pulled in a bunch of empty nets because, you know what, we've already fished all night and there's no fishing. It could have been something where Jesus tells them, I just want you to drop the nets and bring back a bunch of empty nets and I'll help you clean it. It wasn't because he's trying to teach them anything other than he's reminding them. Jesus wanting them to see that this is more than just a fishing decision. Jesus is wanting Peter to see this is a following decision. Will you follow me? This is more than mere nets. This is about what Peter has the opportunity to do beyond Jesus' life here in the 33 years of ministry. This is about Peter's opportunity to go beyond to the nations. You see, Peter thought this was all about fish. And Jesus knew this was all about faith. Peter had no idea what hung in the balance of his decision. He didn't know that what was coming up would be that he would become one of Jesus' closest followers, that he would have the opportunity to know and to see thousands of people respond to the message of Jesus, that he would go before after Jesus had ascended into heaven, and he would stand before so many different people and be like, guys, listen, I want you to know about Jesus. I want you to know, you remember that guy? You killed him. God raised him. You need to say you're sorry. And they did. And thousands came. I mean, Peter didn't know that parents today would be naming their sons Peter. He didn't know that today in this world that we would be talking about him some 2,000 years later. He just knew that Jesus asked him to do something. He said, because you say so. He knew that Jesus asked him to step forward. And it didn't make sense. It wasn't the smartest time to fish. But he chose to follow. He had to decide in this moment, will I trust Jesus enough to do what he says? And you know, for many of us, we've encountered some of those because you say so moments. A moment where obedience does not make all the sense in the world. We don't have all the details. And honestly, this moment feels a little risky. It feels a little adverse. Like, I don't know if I should take this step. We've had those moments where we don't know if we should take that next step. And we know what Jesus is asking us. We feel this idea, we feel compelled to take a step. And in the midst of it, we know we should say, Jesus, because you say so. Sometimes it's just difficult to muster up the courage to really do that. And as a church, we have those moments as well. And honestly, we are in one of those moments where we are sitting here on the eve of, the opportunity of moving out of portable and into permanent. And we've been telling you, I mean, it's a risk. We understand, but it's a calculated risk that we've seen God's hand in the midst of it every step of the way. And the question for us as a church, the question for us collectively is now, yes, we have a building, great. But let me ask you this. Will we become the kind of people who own the mission our building exists to serve? Will we become the kind of people that own the mission that we've built this building to serve? Because you never know what hangs in the balance of your obedience. You never know what hangs in the balance of your saying yes. You never know what hangs in the balance of an invitation, of an opportunity to say yes, to go serve, to give, to be a part of the greater opportunity. And I understand when pastors begin to talk about ownership or serving or generosity, that it makes some of us nervous because it's like, well, here we go. And the building, and we see it, it's almost done, and you're thinking, oh, great, now they need money, and they need volunteers, and here we go. I get this ask, let's do this. But I understand, churches don't handle that well. And some of us have been in environments where when we get asked of these things, it can be challenging, and it's like, what's going on? Y'all are just ridiculous, you're stupid. I mean, I'm just putting words in your mouth. But here's what I want you to know. What I want to try to engage and encourage with you. You see, the opportunity to be a part of what God is doing in the local church is one of the greatest gifts we have to our community. The opportunity to serve, the opportunity to give, the opportunity to fund the local church, the opportunity to partner with what Jesus is doing in our community is one of the greatest opportunities that we have in front of us, because it's a faith thing. It's not about me saying, hey, this is what I need you to do. This is an opportunity for us to partner with our Heavenly Father and live open-handed lives and say, Jesus, I trust you. You see, because serving is never really about just how to get ministry staffed. Serving is a way that our faith is stretched. I love hearing stories of how some of our volunteers, when they serve and they're a part of something bigger than themselves, and they say yes, not knowing what's going on, and then months later they see that story of maybe that little kid that the light bulb came on, and they experience what it looks like to follow Jesus, and they had a small part in that. When somebody invited somebody to come and they say yes and they show up, and next thing you know, you're seeing them take a step in their faith journey to be baptized, and you begin to think, what if I had never invited? Would that have been part? You get to be a part of that story. It's more than just generosity. It's more than just saying this is what you need to do to give to the local church. When we really begin to think about generosity, it's a faith issue. When we look at the life of Jesus, Jesus gave everything he had. And as followers of Jesus, when we get the chance to take ownership of his mission, it is us living open-handed and saying, Jesus, what I have is yours. God, I trust you. Doesn't make sense, but because you say so. See, 1 Chronicles 29, David, this is a few years after Joshua and the Israelites have taken on the promised land. David, who's considered one of the greatest kings to ever live. David, who's a remarkable leader. And David and Goliath in March, you always hear about David and Goliath because we all cheer for the underdog. And we could talk about how Goliaths really don't have a chance anymore in the NIL world, but that's another story. Anyway, I probably went too far into the college basketball world, but it's crazy these days. Anyway. In 1 Chronicles 29, David is preparing the people and talking to them about the resources and how the temple comes in. And listen to what David prayed. He says, everything comes from you, and we have given you only what comes from your hand. This is the heart of stewardship. God, everything I have comes from you. I'm not an owner. I get to be a manager. Everything we have, you have entrusted with us to be able to be a good steward of. It's our time. And when we begin to do an audit of our time, we begin to think, are we a good steward of the time that God has granted us? Our money, our gifts, our influence. And we laugh about influence. I say we laugh. We joke like yesterday, and when I'm coaching sports, I have to kind of pivot my influence because I understand that the way I handle myself, sometimes I'm like, I hope they don't know I'm a pastor, because if they don't know I'm a pastor, I can yell at the refs more. And then the ref's like, hey, you're a pastor, right? And I'm like, no mercy, bud, but yes, I am. Right? Like our influence, our homes, our opportunity. Everything we have comes from God. And when that moves from our head to our heart, it changes the question that we begin to ask. The question is no longer, how much do I have to give? The question is no longer, how much do I have to serve? The question is no longer like, what is the closest thing I can do to make God happy? The question becomes, God, how do you want me to participate in your mission? You see, this is a far better question than trying to get the lowest possible denominator. When we begin to think about, okay, God, I just want to make sure that I make you smile. I want to make sure I do whatever I can just so that your arms are wide open and I can experience it, but I don't want to give you everything. The question begins to change. God, how can I participate in what you are doing? Because in this next season, I'm going to be honest with you guys. We are excited about what is to come. But we understand and we know that the church wasn't meant to be consumed. The church was meant to be lived out. And ownership is going to show up in two practical ways in our time and our treasure. In our time, as we move into the building, we're going to have more opportunities, not just as we get ready to move, but also we're going to have more opportunities with more families coming. More kids, more students, more guests. We've talked about this. Our goal with this building is we want to create a home for the next generation, our next door neighbor, the next generation, our next door neighbor. This is not a home for us to get fat and happy. This is a home for us to invite our neighbors in so that we can show them what it looks like to follow Jesus. And with more opportunity comes more opportunity for us to be a part of other people's story. You see, just having a building and having a lobby, just having a lobby doesn't necessarily welcome nervous guests. It's your smile. Just having seats doesn't necessarily invite a neighbor. If you build it, they will come. It works great on a movie. But a building can give us a home, but here's the deal, it can't own the mission for us. That's where we get the chance to step in. So here's what I want to ask you. I mean, as we get the chance to step forward, and I can't tell you how excited we are. I mean, we're literally counting down the days. I'll tell you this, the amount of times we have to set up can be counted on one hand, and I'll tell you exactly how many times in just a moment. But for some, it's an opportunity to say, I want in. I want to help out in what area, how can I help the most? For some, it's an opportunity for you to jump in and say, you know what? God, I want to be open-handed with my resources. God, I want to be open-handed with my money. I want to be a part of what you're doing in the local church. See, faith, saying yes, it's not about you doing something to check a box for the church. It's about you admitting and saying, God, I trust you. It's about you saying, God, I trust you. I trust you with everything. I trust you with, I want to be the best steward I can with the things you've entrusted to me. So God, I trust you. God, everything I have comes from you. God, I want to be a part of what you're doing. So here's the invitation. Not pressure, but invitation. Not guilt, but an opportunity. Not so you should say, it's not so you should feel bad, but what if this is our Joshua 1 moment where we were to say, God, wherever you send us, we will go. God, whatever you ask of us, we will do. That Luke 5 opportunity where Peter looks at Jesus and says, listen, it doesn't make sense and this ask is inconvenient, but because you say so, I will do whatever you ask. I will let down the net. What does it look like for you to participate in God's mission for the church? What would it look like if years from now you began serving, you said yes to serving in Upstreet? What would it look like for you if you got the chance to get a graduation invitation from that kid? And they invited you to the graduation party and they looked at you and they said, you know what, I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for you. What would it look like if you got the chance to be maybe a greeter on our guest services team? You think parking lot, I mean, it can be scary, but what if you are truly the very first person people see when they walk into the church and you get to be the expression of Jesus? Somebody that's down and out, frustrated, broken, and they see your smile. And they think, I've been to other churches, but there's something different about this church. See, whether it's our time or our treasure, there are opportunities that we have to engage in, to invest in, to be a part of God's mission. And I want you to know, we want air conditioning in the building because we like comfort. The chairs will be a lot nicer and a lot more comfortable. Like, you don't have to worry about the metal chairs. So there are comforts to the new building. But we don't want to just move into a building so that we can say, we've arrived. Collectively, we're asking you to help us take ownership of the process. To be a part, not a small part, but to be a part of what God is doing. And this isn't just about what's happening here. You get the chance to be a part of a network of churches that are gung-ho, that are laser focused on trying to show the world not what it means to be a Christian, because we've got some bad actors trying to do that today. What does it mean to truly follow Jesus with our lives? And to live our lives open-handed, to live our lives as if we are stewards of everything God has granted us. And saying, God, I trust you. So let me ask you, what does that look like for you? What does that yes look like for you? Is that because you say so? Is that trusting God to generously give to the local church or to a movement of individuals or organizations that's doing great things? Is that yes saying, you know what, I would like to be a part of a service team? Is that yes you saying, I want to invite? I want to take ownership of making sure that the chairs aren't just sitting empty, but I want to make sure somebody else gets to experience the comfort of our new chairs, because these metal chairs are something else, but they're going to be better. What does ownership look like for you? Because the first century, Peter had a because you say so moment, and he lived to turn the world around. And yeah, he was just a crazy fisherman that probably couldn't write. That's why Mark came into the picture, and Peter told Mark everything about Jesus, and so Mark could write it down, because Peter probably, the fishermen didn't exactly like to write. They just like to fish. Peter owned it. We're still talking about him today. What would it look like for us to own the opportunity, the mission of inspiring our community, inspiring our world, inspiring the next generation, our next door neighbor, to truly follow after Jesus? It's not easy. It's daunting. But I've been told, you eat an elephant one bite at a time. So by darn it, we're going to eat this stinking elephant one bite at a time until everybody in our community understands and knows that following Jesus truly does make your life better. And it makes you better at life. So would you join us? Would you own the mission, and would you help us as we make great waves in our community? Would you pray with me? God, we love you. God, we thank you so much for the fact that you're a big God. God, honestly, in our world today, God, being a Christian just is easy. We can check a box. God, we can go on our merry way. And we can feel good about the fact that we live in a Christian nation, and we're grateful for that. But God, it is so much bigger than merely checking a box. God, I ask and I plead of you that you would help us as a church become a church that truly does mirror the heart of our Heavenly Father. that we would take on a posture of love and respect for our neighbors and our next generation, that we would invite them in and we would show them and point them to who you are and what you've done in and through our lives, that we would not be silent, but that, God, we would live courageous lives that point people to you. God, that's not easy, because comfort gets the best of us. God, that's not easy because at the end of the day, God, efficiency is what we are made for. We want to cut corners and we want to get to the end game, and we want efficiency. But God, I pray that as we look at what it looks like to follow you, that we would not merely cut corners, but we would take ownership, and we would really ask you, God, how do you want me to participate in your mission? God, what does it look like to trust you with my life? God, may we collectively say, I want in. God, we love you, and we thank you. We ask all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.